Remix.
Hello and welcome to Culture Pop Remix number 20. I'm your host, Oren Merton, and this is another panel discussion, also with Chris and Caren Spitler and Golden. In fact, this conversation was actually recorded the same day that we recorded our panel discussion about Deadpool 2, but due to life being busy and all of that, I couldn't get this one edited and uploaded until now. So have you seen Solo? This is about Solo, and if you haven't seen Solo, you're going to get a lot of spoilers. So please, if you haven't seen the movie, go see it, you'll enjoy it, come back, and listen to what we have to say. Solo hasn't been doing quite as well as some of the other Star Wars movies or superhero films, and it's too bad. It's a fun ride, and I think if you enjoyed the movie, you'll enjoy the discussion because we get into what makes it a fun ride. All right, so without further ado, and with one more spoiler warning, here's our discussion. Hello, and welcome to Culture Pop Remix, the Solo panel. And with me today are Chris and Caren Spitler and Golden, all of whom we are familiar with. Hello, everybody.
Howdy.
Hello.
Hi there.
So let's talk about Solo first and foremost. What did we think of the movie?
I liked it overall. I enjoyed myself.
I liked it a lot. It's not a masterpiece. And I will get to that in another question that you may have, but
Okay.
But ultimately it was a fun escapist ride, and I really liked seeing the old character brought back
Sure.
in a prequel. So yeah, in that way I really enjoyed it.
All right. Golden?
I thought it was fun. I thought it was good. It wasn't the let's go watch this 20,000 times movie, but
Right.
still enjoyable.
I would echo what all of you said. The way I would put it is that I liked it. I didn't love it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a fun adventure, and I walked out of the theater glad I saw it, but it wasn't one of those films that stuck with me. It's a little bit like the movie popcorn. You enjoy it when you're eating it, but when you're done, you don't really think much about the popcorn, like, wow, that was an amazing cuisine, and I really want it, again and again and again. You think, oh, that was good.
Someone started to make a comment today about the character Solo, and what I thought they were going to say was, learning this about Han Solo, did it make you think any less of the character or more of the character? And I thought about it, I'm not really sure, because their opinion was, do I really need to know anything more about Han Solo for the movie?
That gets into a great question. One of the reasons there was such mixed feelings when this movie was first announced is, was this a movie that needed to be made? I mean, have people really been clamoring for the backstory of Han Solo?
Well,
Han Solo.
Does knowing about, I thought you were Landoing it.
Yeah.
But knowing what we know about Solo now, does it devalue the character that we knew in Star Wars, in the original 4, 5, and 6, and beyond?
See, I would say to me it neither devalues nor gives more value. It just sort of is.
I'd agree with that. I enjoyed going to that universe, and sometimes in movies I get this fantasy thing, like when you're reading a book sometimes, where there's a character and in your own mind you kind of want to know more about them a little bit. So in that way I enjoyed getting to know a little bit more about him, but he wasn't any more or less than what I expected from already knowing him.
Yeah, how did you feel about the movie sort of filling in gaps that weren't even really gaps? There was almost a throwaway line in Star Wars, episode 4, in the 1977 movie, where Han Solo is just talking about how fast his ship is. Mm-hmm. And he said, hey, she made the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. I never said, oh, wow, I want to see that.
Yeah, but that is, the whole story of that, or history of that bit being it, people got upset because a parsec is a measure of distance, not time, and people said he was using it like an expression of time. And then it brought up again in one of the newer films where Rey says the ship did the run in 14 parsecs, and he corrects her. So it's like it became this thing for the fans. And then, now suddenly we're going to make a whole film about this. And, the comment you made about the popcorn, when I sat down to think about this movie to talk to you about it, I just had to stop and think really hard. What the hell was this movie about again? Let me think. What was it? What happened again? I mean, I remember the things I liked a little. There was a few little set pieces and moments with characters I liked, and a few little nods to the head and Easter eggs. But ultimately, it didn't have a huge impetus, a drive on the level of the previous films. To some. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, to some degree, I wonder if that has something to do with how troubled it was. Now, I follow the industry very carefully, but even if you don't, I think it just kind of became pretty well known that the original directors for this movie, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who did 21 Jump Street and the Lego Movie, they were fired. Mm-hmm. 80% of the way through the movie. They had filmed 80% of principal photography when they were taken off the film and replaced with Ron Howard. So that ain't nothing.
Yeah. And you got to, how much of that is, do you know how much was reshot, or, what did Ron bring to the picture? I mean, do you know? Do we know?
Yeah, well, there's, like everything, there's all kinds of rumors, and the people who really know are keeping it relatively close to the vest.
Of course.
I've heard it said that Ron Howard reshot 70% of the film.
Wow.
That between his reshoots and that were just, pickups were going to have to be done anyway, and replacing Lord and Miller's stuff, he had 70% of the movie. Now, that makes sense because it looks like he touched probably every scene to some degree. Uh-huh. And also, I think that the Directors Guild rules are something like you're not allowed to get a sole director's credit if you do less than 51% or something like that. So it makes sense it would be over 51%, but they say it's as high as 70%. So, yeah, I mean, this is... It is a Ron Howard film, but I wonder if that's sort of the fact that Miller and Lord did all the pre-production, the casting, all that, how much of an impact that has on sort of how the end turned out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I guess we won't really know. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's not a Miller cut. There's not like a Lord and Miller cut because they didn't get that far.
Right. That's It's a question for the ages, I suppose. We're left with what we have, and what we have is an okay film.
Yeah, and I don't want to downplay how good of a director Ron Howard is. Yeah. I mean, he is not, just a fly-by-night director. He has done some great films, and he knows how to direct his way around an action scene. Mm-hmm. So I'm betting that the train heist had a lot to do with him.
Yeah.
Because first of all, I do know some of the casting that he did. Interestingly, the guy originally hired to play Dryden Voss was Michael K. Williams, who was in The Wire. And apparently he filmed the entire part of Dryden Voss, but then he could not come back for reshoots. So it was Ron Howard who replaced him with Paul Bettany.
Yeah.
So that's why. So every scene with Paul Bettany is all Ron Howard.
Right.
That's all him.
So what you're saying is he had a different vision for Dryden Voss.
Oh, completely different vision. Apparently, the original Michael K. Williams character was all was a mocap character, an alien.
Oh, wow.
So he went 100% different.
That is very different.
But the flip side is, I thought Paul Bettany did a great job.
Yeah, that different. You kind of saw Paul Bettany in a different way.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I again, I think,
and it looked like he was having a lot of fun playing that character.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where I don't know quite how much is Ron Howard, but I wouldn't just poo-poo it because it is, because I think he's a really talented guy.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that it looks like a cohesive movie has, says a lot for him. I mean, the fact that he was able to pull together what Lord and Miller did and sort of make it into a real, cohesive film speaks well for him.
Yeah.
So talking characters, how do you feel the other actors did in their roles?
Well, that's an interesting point, because as I was doing research into all the rumors and everything else about this film, one of the rumors was that one of the reasons that Kathleen Kennedy ultimately fired Phil and Lord is that they were so unhappy with the performance that they were able to get out of Alden
Ehrenreich.
Thank you. That they were so unhappy, they actually hired an acting coach for him, and still wasn't that happy. And so then that wasn't the sole reason that she fired them, but that's allegedly one of the reasons. So first of all, I should say, I don't think, if they did hire an acting coach for him, I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, all professionals go to professional training. All professionals get coaching. I mean, nobody begrudges a teacher for going to training.
And the acting coach could have been someone who was specifically looking at how to help him be solo.
Yeah, exactly. So that's not a bad thing,
right.
But it is an interesting
alone.
thing. Yeah, it is an interesting thing. As far as the acting goes, to me, the heart of the movie, I honestly didn't care about filling in the gaps in Han's history. It's just not something I needed done. I enjoyed it, but I didn't need it. But I did really enjoy seeing the friendship of Han Solo and Chewbacca. How I enjoyed watching that develop.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks well for the actors involved.
I thought you already kind of knew that the monster was going to be Chewbacca, but still how it's handled, with him knowing just enough to speak to Chewbacca,
right,
and seeing how they could how he could turn the situation to his benefit.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think that was done very well. I think that I think we need to.
And all of that is solidified with a shower scene.
Yeah, yeah. That was amusing. Though that brings up an interesting point, because speaking of what director did what, from what I've read, Lord and Miller, they're very much into humor, and apparently one of the things that Kathleen Kennedy did not like about them at all was that once they started filming, they were very improvisational. They wanted to make it a comedy, and Kathleen Kennedy, who's the keeper of all things Star Wars, was like, no, this is a serious, this is our classic mythology, and we can joke and we can have humor, but we need to take it seriously. But that is very much, they, quote unquote, say, a Lord and Miller type of gag.
I don't think it was necessarily a gag. It was that it wasn't a big deal to Chewbacca.
Right.
And it's only us bringing in our prior beliefs that it becomes even funny.
Right. Well, speaking of funny, this is another thing I read, that and this is something that Alden talked about, I guess, in an interview, that apparently with Lord and Miller, the scene after the train heist, when they're sort of regrouping the survivors, Beckett, Solo, and Chewbacca, and Beckett's really upset because basically he feels, Han Solo directly led to the death of Val, whom he had a relationship with. So apparently, well, start with the movie. It's a heavy scene. He punches Han Solo, and he's like really upset with him for, the way things went down. Well, apparently, Alden explained in the Lord and Miller version there was a snowball fight. That it was sort of this improv snowball fight. And trying to put myself in the shoes of Kathleen Kennedy, we didn't see the scene. Maybe it was great. Maybe it wasn't. But I can understand why she might want a veteran hand like Ron Howard who knows how to, direct sort of gravitas and all that to handle it in what would be a much more traditional way, but maybe a way that kind of landed better.
I just cannot see Beckett throwing snowballs after losing Val.
Yeah, I agree.
Or anyone,
I agree.
really.
Yeah, or anyone really.
Yeah. So it may not be it's in internet lore. It's the troubled production, but things may have actually worked out for the better this way. So
you have essentially both of them losing their female counterpart very quickly.
Right.
We're just introduced to Han. We lose his girl.
Right.
We're just introduced to Beckett. He loses his girl.
Right. Yeah, that's true. They kind of have a little bit of a parallel path, and until the end, of course. I think that. Well, let's put it this way. This movie, I think, expands the Star Wars universe, not in a huge way, but in a bit of a way. It adds a couple more planets, and it shows us in what my opinion was a really cool thing, sort of trench warfare. The Empire engaging in trench warfare planet to planet, as opposed to just, clean white stormtroopers marching away and droids and everything else. That was kind of a really almost gritty war movie type thing, but I really liked it. So how do you feel that this movie either enhanced or, didn't enhance the Star Wars universe?
Well, I liked it. One thing I did like is it didn't fall back on some of the same old tropes. Like, with the exception of the laser knife thing, we didn't see any, lightsabers. We didn't see a lot of the Force and Jedi and all that got left out, which is good. It's nice, to see that other things happen in the universe. And the opening sequence with stealing the speeder and all that stuff, that was fun. It's like you said, it had a gritty underworld quality, but we were in a city, not some wind-blown encampment on some forgotten planet. It was more of an urban thing, and it was a different flavor, which was nice. I like those things a lot about the film. I liked that it did have a sense of atmosphere, and that we were feeling like we were in places we hadn't been before, which was cool. That I did really enjoy.
Yeah,
it was nice to see Brandon Glover with the role of Lando Calrissian.
Yeah. Donald Glover.
Sorry, I said Brandon. Huh?
That's all right. Donald Glover was fantastic.
Yeah, Donald Glover is just, no matter which character he takes on, seems to just have a really easy way and easy flow with that character. He just seems to get into the character and be so easy with it. And it comes across on screen.
I agree. He was fantastic. And he had a wonderful relationship with L337, his droid.
Yeah, she was great.
I mean, with the civil rights, droid rights now.
Yeah.
I thought that was cute. I do like how the Star Wars movies are giving each of their droids a different personality.
Yeah.
And you think that she's joking about the fact that he's in love with her and all of that, but yet he is emotionally attached, a lot more emotionally attached
Yeah.
than we think he is.
Right.
Nearly gets himself killed trying to rescue a robot. So, there's a moment there, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I give Donald Glover a lot of credit for, I give him a ton of credit for this. I give Alden a bit of credit for this, but Donald Glover specifically, he was able to channel Billy D. Williams without ever imitating him.
Yeah.
He never tried to be Billy D. Williams, but he had that same energy and cool and mannerism, and it was wonderful. Now with Alden, he was playing his own character. He wasn't trying to be Han Solo, which I think is good, and that's what he should have done. But he did sometimes, he'd hold his gun in the same way, or, he'd just sort of smirk the same way. And I think that was good. It wasn't quite as nuanced as Donald Glover, but it was he was trying, and I think he did it.
Yeah, I'd say Donald Glover and Chewbacca owned this thing. I heard a little interview with the guy in the Chewbacca costume who was like a Finnish soccer player.
How about that?
Not an actor, and he got the job because he was over 7 feet and had blue eyes. and I guess they said they contacted the team and they said, would anybody be interested in being in a film? They didn't tell him what it was. And so he, I guess in high school, he wanted to be an actor, but he was so damn tall, he knew that the chances of that happening were pretty limited, or his roles would be very limited. And he was also athletically talented, so he ended up going into athletics. But he jumped at the chance to do this, and he found out he was going to be Chewbacca, and just did backflips, and so seemed like a really charming guy who just stumbled into this amazing experience. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so things that we didn't like. Here's a couple things that I actually I wouldn't even go so far as to say I didn't like them, but they definitely were things that stuck in my craw. So I thought the train heist was great, but in a world in which everything is floating and flying, why do they need to stick to the rail?
Okay.
It's never clear why this had to be a train.
Just because we haven't seen one before, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it. It's because they wanted to do a train heist.
I think maybe also because the fact of what the cargo is.
That could be.
That if it's floating, maybe it's going to be a little bit more unstable, and the train is a way to make it more stable.
I'll buy that. Okay.
All
That's as good a reason as
And
any.
the train was cool.
That's right. That is now canon.
The fact that the train, could turn one way and the other was just pretty cool.
It was a great scene, and it was filmed particularly well. It's fairly interesting. Right before I saw Solo, I watched a YouTube video by a filmmaker about car chases, and it was about the elements that go into a well done and well executed car chase. That you have to know the geography, you have to be able to see the reaction shots of the people involved, you have to see it from the perspective of the people involved. And literally this movie, Ron Howard, he hit all the buttons. He knew exactly how to do it. I mean, it was really well put together. I mean, and Lord Miller, I don't know how much of it they did, but they really knew their way around an action scene. So, I have to give that credit.
Also got to see some cool new stormtroopers or troopers on that train too.
That's true.
That's one of the joys of these films is how many different variations of the trooper costume will there be eventually? There must be 80 by now, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. One of the other things that kind of made me shake my head a little bit is for those who are listening who have never seen the original episode 4 before the special edition of it, Han shot Guido first.
Yes.
So on the one hand, I appreciated that he shot Beckett first. I mean, yes, this is the Han we know.
Right.
But on the other hand, I really think they they're really trying, I think, almost too hard to already, signal that no, really, he's a hero, he's the good guy. She even says, Kira even says at one point, I know the truth about you. You're a good guy.
Right.
And it's supposed to be, one of the nice things about Star Wars episodes 4, 5, and 6 is that they weren't deep character movies, but Han Solo originally did have a real arc. He begins episode 4 as the gangster who will do anything. He will kill people. He will do anything for money. And as the 3 movies progress, he goes from this guy who, will kill his way out of a problem to a general leading the rebellion.
Right.
And
well, in this movie, he's just paying for it.
Right. And that's the thing. They've already set up that he's a hero and that, in fact, although we never hear about it again in his entire life, he funded the rebellion.
Right.
So I kind of think that, I don't know. I think they're trying to sort of make him too much of a hero too soon.
What do you think, Caren?
I hadn't really thought about that, about the hero part of it. For me, the movie was, just about exploring this guy as a person, and I didn't really flash forward into the old episodes about the fact that, he pretty much was a scoundrel from the get-go. And so now, how do you really bridge this character that they've set up now to be that person then?
Because he still needs to go back. Somehow he's still the scoundrel.
Right.
So how is he the scoundrel, or is 4, 5, and 6 and beyond just really, is it just an act?
Well, and the question is, okay, if we're talking about interpersonal dynamics, we know what Chewbacca is and who Chewbacca is, and it always is, and Chewbacca has not changed. Chewbacca is a rock. Why would Chewbacca hang out with an asshole? Wouldn't do it.
Yeah,
so Han has to have always been, underneath it all, a good guy. Misguided.
He pretends to be the scoundrel?
Yeah, I think he does. I think he pretends to be the scoundrel so he can, try to make himself into this character that can deal in this currency of bad attitude and be the smuggler and all that. But
and he's
not really
a very good poker player.
Yeah,
very good poker player.
Yeah, but he really isn't ultimately that person. It's just this thing he has to do, and we see him, throughout the films, always ready to be somebody else, play some other part, change, put on a costume, do a different voice, never very well, but he's always, my favorite line from 4 is when he's talking to in the trash compactor. It's like, yeah, everything's fine down here. How are you? That that he's always been kind of a trying to be bigger than life, larger than life, and he never really pulls it off. And I guess seeing him this way in the early years, you kind of get the idea that and he's always screwed up, right? He's always owes people money. They're always tracking him down. Yeah.
How many of you were familiar with the Clone Wars cartoons? And how big of a surprise was it to see Darth Maul at the end?
Well, that was fun. Okay, before we do that, though, things we hated. I hated Lady Proxima. Hated the giant centipede. That was as bad as an Ewok to me. That was just, why is that in this film? Why did she have to be a big bug? I just with a Bronx accent, okay. Anyway, I've said it.
One of the things that I didn't enjoy as much, just because I think it's been done one time too many, was of course there was some entertainment, and it's this mix, the duet thing with the guy in the jar and the girl. And as much as when you see a Star Wars film that you're going to see all these different characters, all these different creatures, because that's the world they live in. But I think sometimes they try a little too hard with those entertainment scenes, and I feel like they've all had them.
Yeah. The entertainment's always goofy. They're always goofy.
I wonder if that is something that young kids really love or not. I don't know the answer to that question, but I wonder if it's something that they love.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I could have passed on that.
Yeah.
Darth Maul.
So,
he was fun to see. Yeah.
Did you watch the Clone Wars cartoons at all? Because
I saw some of it. Yeah, go ahead.
Because in the cartoon, we meet, half of Darth Maul,
right?
And we see the process of him getting his prosthetic legs and getting back on his feet and becoming a powerhouse again.
Right. He's like half spider for a while or something. And then he gets legs, and I seen some of it, but I haven't seen all the Clone Wars. In a lot of ways, the Clone Wars is better than some of the films, but that's another.
Well, they're certainly better than the prequels, better than 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
that's not hard to do, but they were. But yeah, so I got a kick out of that because I knew his backstory, and I was like, oh, there he is. He's participating again.
Yep.
So to me, that was a bit of a kick. I have read some people online who really hated it. I am not one of those people. I thought it was actually pretty cool.
There were a few fun little overlays like that, like a couple things like I mentioned to Caren and Jerem talking about Bosk. She says, "What Bosk?"
Yeah.
Bosk. He was the lizard-headed dude in the yellow jumpsuit, and the bounty hunter. And she's like, "Okay, I think I remember that." Like, well, I do because he was an action figure, and I wanted him as a kid.
Exactly,
I never got him.
I remember the action figure.
I also love seeing how the Millennium Falcon became gap-toothed. You watch watch the whole thing. Okay, so when are they going to lose the piece in the front? What is that? And you find out it's a life pod. Right? Oh, okay. And we never replaced that. So.
Somebody pointed out online that this kind of contradicted quote-unquote canon a little bit in that apparently at one point in the 80s there was a toy in which the gap was filled by like a cargo freight holder thing.
Okay.
But, I guess they figured that wasn't on film, so they could just rewrite that.
Are toys canon? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. All right, as we wrap this up, I've read that this is the first of a trilogy of young Han Solo movies.
Okay.
How do we feel about that?
I'm fine with it. As much as I said in the beginning that, obviously this isn't groundbreaking, it certainly didn't have the same effect that the original films had on me. However, sometimes when I am interested in a world, I really like to go into it further and find out other things. Not so much, it's not so much about learning all the gaps about Han, but more so being around that character as a younger person. And I really did enjoy, like you said, which was basically a bromance story between him and Chewbacca. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed getting to see other parts of things that were going on, and the beginning of the, of them rising up against the Empire. So I enjoy living in that world. Now, with that said, this could be a TV show. It doesn't necessarily have to be a big screen event. But if there's others, I'll definitely go to them.
I think also I'm hopeful that the next movies, having gotten some of this backstory out of the way, are going to be a little bit more exciting and a little bit more action for what we would expect for Han Solo and Chewbacca.
Yeah.
And I hope that it's not just him chasing after Kira.
Right. I also hope that it doesn't. This film, while it did, its entire premise was a line from a previous film. What it didn't do, which I was happy, was it wasn't so proud of itself for, nodding its head 1,000 times to all the other films. It did it in a way that was pretty look how cute we are, but we've managed to make it organic in the film, and so you say, oh, that's kind of cool, without being felt like it was being shoved down your throat. I hope that if there are 2 more films, that they do resist the temptation to say, oh, look what we just did. Oh, remember that movie? Remember that line? That there's not too much of that, because if they run thin on material, that's what they're going to do, and then I'm going to get pissed. So,
yeah. All right. Well, Chris, Caren, Golden, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See ya.
And that was our solo panel. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed recording it. If you have any comments or suggestions or questions, please do not hesitate to email at info@culturepopremix.com. If you like this episode, please leave a review in the Apple Podcasts app or iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Remember to be good to yourselves and each other, and I will catch you next time.
Culture Pop Remix.